All right, part 2 on the war on terror. Camera died, sorry about that. So, 9/11, right? We talked about the events, the attacks and everything that happened before 9/11, right? We had an attack on the World Trade Center. We had, I'll go through it again really quick just in case I talk too fast. Oop, I'm going the wrong way there. Just in case I talk too fast there at the end, or because the camera was running out of battery, if it messed up some of the recordings here. So, quickly through some of the attacks by Al-Qaeda, or at least inspired by Al-Qaeda, because some of these will occur before, Al-Qaeda is really as formed as it was by 9/11, but inspired by the same people, occurred by the same people. Osama bin Laden's in charge of a lot of this stuff. So, Aden, Yemen, we talked about 3 hotels are bombed that housed U.S. troops there. In 1993, we had the Black Hawk Down incident in Somalia. 93, that same year, we had the failed attempt at destroying the World Trade Center, but 5 did die in that explosion at the underground parking structure. Embassy bombings in Nairobi, Kenya, and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Right? The reason they targeted American embassies is that technically American embassies are sovereign ground. They are technically part of America, but abroad. So they were seen as American intrusion or Western intrusion, I suppose, by these people. More than 200 people are going to get killed. Most of those people killed are Kenyans or Tanzanians, because a lot of people go to our embassies seeking maybe a chance to immigrate to our country, or a lot of people work for the embassy, things like that. And more than 5,000 people are going to be injured. Both of these bombings were taken out using vans filled with explosives. Then the USS Cole bombing off the coast at Aden, Yemen. Right. So there have been issues in Yemen. We put one of our bigger ships out there, the USS Cole. And one morning, a couple of men in a motorized little boat, looked like a little fishing boat. A lot of people do fishing off of that coast. Sailed up next to the Yemen and smiled and waved at them, and then drove their ship into the side, and it exploded. Opened up a very large hole, as if you can see there. My tripod's being annoying. 30-foot by 40-foot hole in the side of the boat. It did not sink, but 17 will die and 39 injured. Okay. Our response. Okay. Finally, response might be a little bit there, because we did bomb in Sudan. There was some activity. We did bomb a factory that we said they were using to make weapons of some sort. It actually turned out just to be a facility where they made medicine, but we didn't ever really apologize for that. That was under Clinton. Anyways, FBI, CIA, and State Department all do their own investigations, right? So the FBI on the ground in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Yemen, right, investigating all of these leads. Same with the CIA, same with the State Department. The FBI and the CIA have never liked each other. They always fight against each other. Okay? There's a lot of political infighting there, people fighting for power and all sorts of things like that. And so they didn't share any information, and neither did the State Department. Because they didn't share information, worse things will happen. Okay? And still to this day, the FBI and the CIA and the State Department don't play nice with each other. I'll recommend some stuff you can look at to read and watch that kind of helps explain that too. Anyways, part of this as well is that we sent missiles. We launched them off of a ship there, cruise missiles that landed in Afghanistan trying to blow up some training facilities, but they were ineffective. Also caused a lot of anger internationally, because people don't like it when we shoot missiles over them without telling them. And also we did kill civilians in Afghanistan. We were targeting training sites. Some of them weren't actually training sites that we thought were, but weren't. And innocent people did die. So, last question before we get to 9/11. Al-Qaeda attacked U.S. troops or embassy workers in 3 of these countries. Which were they? A, Yemen, B, Kenya, C, Tanzania, D, Iraq, E, Saudi Arabia. All right, so I know I got through some of this before the camera died, but let's go through it real quick again. September 11th of 2001, what we commonly refer to as 9/11, be the worst terror attack in U.S. history. 4 commercial planes are hijacked all in the same morning by Al-Qaeda sleeper cells. We did have some intelligence that Al-Qaeda was going to do something like this. We had received calls. The FBI and the CIA had both received calls from flight instructors. One was in Florida, because a bunch of Saudi Arabians, so there's 19 hijackers, 16 came from Saudi Arabia. A bunch of Saudi Arabians or Middle Easterners were taking flight simulation trainings, but never working on how to land. And one of the flight trainers thought that was odd, so he reached out to the FBI and the CIA, and nothing ever came of it. So there were people living in our country for a long time planning these attacks, training for these attacks within our borders. Two of these planes, American Airlines Flight 11 and United Airlines Flight 175, will hit the World Trade Center towers in New York City early in the morning of September 11th. One hit the North Tower, one hit the South Tower. Obviously, we know both towers will eventually collapse. They hit the World Trade Center because it was seen as a symbol of American economic power throughout the world. Two more planes will be hijacked that morning. American Airlines Flight 77 will be flown into the Pentagon, causing a sincere amount of damage. United Airlines Flight 93, what we call the hero flight because the passengers rebelled and fought back against their hijackers, that will crash into a field in Pennsylvania. We believe that that flight was heading towards the White House. So all in all, 19 hijackers, nearly 3,000 Americans, 2,996 Americans killed that morning. So the smoking towers right there, eventually they would fall. I was in middle school when this happened. Luckily for me, I don't have any family in New York, so I don't have to worry about that. But one of my best friends, I didn't know him at the time, but I obviously we're best friends now, grew up in New York City and had friends that worked in the towers. Or maybe not friends, family friends that worked in the towers. Luckily for them, they were able to get out, but a lot of others didn't. So how many Americans died on 9/11? 1,597, 2,111, 2,996, 3,412, A, B, C, or D. So what did Osama bin Laden say about 9/11? Why did they attack us? The general line that came out of the Bush administration, supported by basically all politicians in America at the time, was that they attacked us because of our freedoms, because we let women drive, and women here don't wear a hijab, and we allow, we don't live by Sharia law, we allow people to drink, and we allow people to do this or that or whatever, right? That is not the case. The reason that they attacked us was because they don't like our foreign policy and they don't like our involvement in the Middle East. And how do we know that? Well, I'm going to read this quote to you from Osama bin Laden, which happened right after, but we arrested Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, KSM, we generally call him. He was the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks, and when he got a chance to explain why he did it, he said because of American foreign policy, straight up. Every time we ask him, it's because of that. But because we don't want to change our foreign policy, we found a different reason to claim that they were attacking us. So, here's Osama bin Laden's quote. Quote, "This is America, hit by God in one of its softest spots. Its greatest buildings were destroyed, thank God for that. There is America full of fear from its north to its south, from its west to its east, thank God for that. What America is tasting now is something insignificant compared to what we have tasted for scores of years. Our nation and the Islamic world has been tasting this humiliation and this degradation for more than 80 years. Its sons are killed, its blood is shed, its sanctuaries are attacked, and no one hears and no one heeds. To America I say only a few words to it, and to its people I swear by God, who has elevated the skies without pillars, that neither America nor the people who live in it will dream of security before we live it in Palestine, and not before all infidel armies leave the land of Muhammad, peace be upon him." So in his whole quote here, he didn't once say anything about American freedoms, didn't say one thing about women's roles in society or anything like that. What he said is that they attacked because America has been humiliating the Islamic world for 80 years. He said that America has killed their sons, shed their blood, and destroyed their sanctuaries. And very specifically, that makes it obvious that this is about foreign policy. It says that America won't get security until they get security in Palestine, right? So it's directly saying that this is about our support for Israel. And not before all infidel armies leave the land of Muhammad. Now, so until all American troops, all Western troops leave Saudi Arabia. So they are mad about our meddling in the Middle East, our foreign policy in the Middle East, and our armies being in Saudi Arabia and our support of Israel, right? That's not to say that any of what they did was okay, but we can't accurately address the threat or change future threats without actually addressing what they said, right? They did not say that they attacked us for our freedoms, they attacked us because of our foreign policy. So either we need to adjust how they interpret our foreign policy, or we need to adjust our foreign policy, or else things will continue in similar fashion. So ISIS attacks on the bottom, Al-Qaeda attacks on the top. Both are still active groups. Obviously, ISIS is our biggest threat at this point, but they are both still around. So Al-Qaeda, all in all, we have been mostly effective in neutralizing Al-Qaeda, right? We've killed most of their leadership over and over and over again. Obviously, we killed Osama bin Laden under under the Obama administration. There's a movie about that called Zero Dark 30, which I'd recommend, although it condones torture a little too much for my taste. But we killed their leadership. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, we got arrested. He's still in prison at this point right now in Miami, in federal lockup and all that sort of stuff. So they're still around, right? They have more than 22 different groups operating in the Middle East, North Africa, and even in the Southeast Asian realm. They're aligned with 10 other groups, including ISIS. There's estimated to be between 60 and 80,000 al-Qaeda fighters. In the crazy way the world turns, we are actually allied with some al-Qaeda groups. We're, as part of our support for the Saudi Arabian war in Yemen, as part of our fight against some parts of ISIS groups, we've been negotiating with al-Qaeda. The Obama administration did, the Bush administration did, the Trump administration is currently negotiating with al-Qaeda to try to reach some sort of settlement in Afghanistan. Also negotiating with the Taliban, right? They're still around. ISIS is the chief terror threat to the United States at this point. So ISIS or ISIL, you'll hear both. It stands for either the Islamic State in Syria or Islamic State in Libya. Their goal, to create their own fundamentalist Islamic republic. Again, important to note with all this stuff is that ISIS, Al-Qaeda, these groups greatly pervert their religion for evil purposes. It does not say in the Quran to kill people from the western part of the world. It does not say in the Quran to do the things that these people are doing. They interpret the Quran to say that. Lots of people interpret religious texts to do bad things, and they will justify it using those religious texts. That doesn't make it okay. Here in America, we use the Bible to legitimize slavery. We said it's in the Bible that slavery is okay, so it's fine. We should continue doing it. We've used the Bible to justify other things that we have done that aren't particularly great. And that's not to compare us to both, but it's for me to tell you that the Muslim faith, Islam, is not the enemy here. It's people that use Islam in this evil purpose. They are the enemy, right? That's what I'm trying to say with that whole statement. So, how did ISIS come apart? It was our fault that ISIS came to be. It mostly occurs, or basically all occurs, during the Bush administration. So here's what happens. We invade Iraq, right? We overthrow their government, and then we have this big decision on our hands. What do we do with the Iraqi military, right? So at the same time that we've overthrown Iraq, a lot of other countries are going through instability. Obviously, we overthrew the government in Afghanistan when we invaded after the 9/11 attacks. Syria was going through a civil war, which they are still going through a civil war in. And in Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, the longtime dictator there, was overthrown. So all these countries are having all this instability. Who's going to step up and fill that vacuum? Who's going to step up and take power? So while this is going on, what are we going to do with the Iraqi military? Okay? In Iraq, there was one party, the Ba'athist Party. And if you wanted to have a job that made any money in the country, if you want to be a teacher, if you want to be a police officer, you want to be in the military, if you wanted a job that paid enough for you to live, you had to join the Ba'ath Party. Right? That's how it works in totalitarian regimes, right? If you want to have a job to make any money in China, obviously you got to be part of the Communist Party there, right? That's how it works in these sorts of countries, these sorts of authoritarian countries. So, we decided on a policy called de-Baathification. So if you were in the Ba'athist Party, you are now fired from whatever job you hold. You can't work in the government, you can't be a teacher, you can't be in the military. So, all of these guys who were in the military now are unemployed and they can't feed their families, but what did they keep with them? They kept their guns. So now who are they angry at? They're angry at America, right? Because they're going to blame us for their military being disbanded, for all this upheaval in their lives, and for them losing their jobs and losing their ability to feed themselves and their families. So when some bad people who are perverting this religion for evil purposes, or perverting the Islamic faith for evil purposes, come to these men who had just lost their jobs, possibly going to lose their homes and lose their ability to feed themselves, and say, hey, this is America's fault. Right? And here's the reasons why. And all these things, they are way more apt to listen. So that's how ISIS comes about. They will be responsible for thousands and thousands of attacks and deaths in the Middle East, Africa, Europe, and America. Now, by the end of the Obama administration, they had already lost between 40 and 80% of their land, money, and fighters. Still dangerous, though. Still what they do mainly that makes ISIS more dangerous than Al-Qaeda is that they inspire lots of lone wolf attacks. They're very active on the internet, recruiting people constantly, and they convince people to attack in their name, which we have seen here in America The first one that jumps to my head is San Bernardino. There's also the Pulse nightclub shooting in Florida, two that were inspired by ISIS, right? The people who committed those attacks declared allegiance to ISIS shortly afterward, or right before. Now we're into the Trump administration, and they continued on. Basically, the Obama administration, the Trump administration had basically the same plans in terms of fighting ISIS, although the one big difference will be loosening restrictions on drone warfare, but we've further eroded more of their land away. They're down to 5-ish% of the land that they ever had, if even that much. Low on fighters, low on materials, but still dangerous, still extremely dangerous. So that's kind of where we are. That's where the state of play is with the war on terror at this point. To understand this better, on the right, there's a book called The Looming Tower, which is fantastic. And by fantastic, I mean super angrifying. That makes me very mad, but it's very well written, full of a lot of good information, won the Pulitzer Prize. If you don't want to read the whole Looming Tower, which you should read, you need to understand this world that we live in right now and the war on terror. It's important in your daily life. But maybe you don't want to read the 350 pages, I think it is. There is a Hulu adaptation that's only like 6 episodes long. It's very, very good. I would recommend that to The Looming Tower. If you want to understand the FBI and the CIA in broad strokes, these are two best one-volume explanations of them. But in there, you get to see how much the CIA and the FBI don't get along, right? So Legacy of Ashes and Enemies, both written by Tim Weiner, are great books. In there, they explain how the FBI and the CIA don't get along. You'll get a lot of that in The Looming Tower as well. To understand ISIS, there's nothing better than this podcast called Caliphate. This journalist here, her name is Rukmini Callimachi. She works for the New York Times, and she would literally go into ISIS territory as soon as ISIS people were pushed out, and she would scavenge for anything she could find to help explain how they run their Islamic State, how they recruit people, how this or that works. And through that work, she's written a whole lot of fantastic articles and stuff like that that you could read on the New York Times website or listen to her podcast. It's terrifying, but it's very good information. All right, so that's it on War on Terror stuff. Next time, I will talk to you about President Bush II and President Obama, which will be the last big lecture for the school year. So, until next time.